Hi, my name is Ismail. I'm an articulation coach, and I'm here today to tell you why you should be studying your native language. Now, you might ask, why should I study something I already know, something which comes as naturally to you as breathing? And to that I say, fluency isn't the end point, it's the starting line. We conflate fluency with mastery, and yet there are huge disparities among native speakers of a language. On one end of the spectrum, the aspirational side, shall we say, we have authors, comedians, creatives of every persuasion. But most of us believe we can never occupy this world. That talent is the price of admission. We believe in some real sense that we can't escape our programming, that our lives are predetermined by a cosmic dice roll. That's the excuse we resort to spare ourselves a monumental effort. In reality, this ordinary, extraordinary dichotomy doesn't exist. I've been studying articulation for several years now, and if there's one thing I've learned, it's that language is a skill that can be scaled infinitely. There is no upper limit to your potential. So what do you stand to gain by studying your native language? Everything. It will improve your life in almost every possible way, socially, professionally, intellectually, romantically. And that's because language permeates everything. It's the vehicle for our thoughts. It underpins every interaction. You'll become funnier, more confident, more creative. Stand-up comedians, who we consider some of the funniest people, all study language, except maybe the ones who steal jokes. They're constantly revising their material, trying on different phrases, endlessly gearing towards that perfect punchline, and we love them for it. The verbal aspect of comedy isn't everything, but it's a pretty major pillar. If you aren't reading them already, you'll unlock the classics of world literature, some of the greatest books ever written. And the only real barrier to entry to reading these books is that they're written using complex, archaic language. But once you remove that obstacle, you'll be able to tap into a rich literary tradition and appreciate timeless works of art. Not only that, but you'll develop a richer imagination and consequently a more creative mind. If public speaking is a fear of yours, studying language is a major step towards confronting that fear. The anxiety of speaking in front of a large group of people, like this, is of course rooted in fear of failure, and we're afraid we'll fail because we don't have faith in our own abilities. So how do we go about changing that? The answer is simple. Confidence is a feedback loop. The better our skills, the more confidence we have. The more confidence we have, the better we perform. And the more we perform, the better our skills become. And round the cycle goes. Needless to say, it will also enhance your career prospects. You'll perform better at interviews, make better first impressions, and you'll acquire the ability to convey your ideas in a more compelling manner. To point out a more immediate benefit, your writing will improve dramatically. Will essay writing become fun? No. But you will acquire the ability to phrase your ideas in a way that makes it less of a chore to write them. And the advantages conferred aren't limited to your native language. The stronger you're based in your first language, the easier it is to learn others. If I can direct your attention to the chart on the screen, if you're familiar with the English words on the left, you would easily acquire the Spanish words on the right, given how similar they are in form and in meaning. For instance, take this first word, the Spanish word culpable. The English word is spelled exactly the same word, the English word culpable, and they're broadly similar in meaning. Okay, let's pretend I've convinced you. How do you actually go about studying your native language? The first step is all about expanding your awareness. Like a writer, like a comedian, you need to view the entire world as a source of material. Regard everything around you as a rich source of language, books, movies, even everyday conversation. Ordinarily, we pay very little attention to how ideas are expressed. It's only at the extremes, when something is extraordinarily bad or uncommonly good, that we snap to attention. And attention is the most crucial factor for memory. If you're able to make this attentive state of mind your baseline, you'll be able to retain a lot more of the words that you encounter. The second step is to cultivate your taste. All of us are able to tell when we've encountered compelling language. All of us have some intuitive sense of what that looks like. But you need to refine this faculty until you're able to recognize eloquent language in all its various forms. In addition to that, you need to disentangle your personal aesthetic sensibilities from what I call universal taste. Universal taste is quite simply how the vast majority of people are inclined to perceive individual words. Certain words for you might evoke a very personal association that doesn't exist in the minds of other people. And so a certain level of objectivity is required. You need to be able to step outside of yourself and imagine what it's like to be other people. What else can you do to cultivate your taste? Get into the habit of comparing sentences that express the same idea in different words. Ask yourself, which one sounds more pleasing to the ear? Then ask yourself why. You need to grasp the underlying rhetorical principle that makes the superior sentence so effective. The third step is related to two interconnected concepts, the active vocabulary and the passive vocabulary. The active vocabulary consists of all of the words you use. The passive vocabulary consists of all of the words you know. Most people only use a small fraction of the words they know. They're underutilizing their vocabulary. In order to, although it may sound unintuitive, in order to enrich your vocabulary, you don't necessarily need to learn new words. You just need to leverage what you already know to maximum effect. Here's a good rule of thumb. If you don't use a word, treat it as a word you don't know. If you do that, what will happen is you'll be able to harness the full extent of your vocabulary. The fourth step is related to something I call the meta-vocabulary. Now, to put it simply, the meta-vocabulary is a higher order vocabulary that sits above your basic one. It's built from all of the words you know. These are just a few examples. And the meta-vocabulary, it's either comprised of words that combine to some synergistic effect, or complex ideas that can't be expressed in a single word. Examples include words like time travel and unrequited love. There is no individual word in the English language that can express either of these ideas. And the English language is full of natural pairings like these. But why should we limit ourselves in this way? Why should we limit ourselves to existing combinations? Something I encourage you to do is to combine different words and see what the cumulative effect is. Sometimes words become more than the mere sum of their parts. A term like powerful narrative to describe stories that move us on a deep emotional level. An ethical framework to describe a model of human behavior that allows us to behave morally or ethically. And you can get as creative as you want with this. Generational envy to describe how sometimes the old view the young because of the advantages we have over their generation. Now, to demonstrate this to you, the efficacy of the meta-vocabulary, I've used all of these terms in my speech so far. And this is just a small selection of the ones that I considered the most compelling. I didn't obviously use terms, I didn't put terms like stand-up comedian up here because it's a basic term we all know. But these are the more creative ones that I quite enjoy. So, how do you go about changing your vocabulary? There are different strategies you can employ. Most people think this one at the top, the least effective, memorization, is the way to go. You pull out a dictionary and you learn words verbatim. You learn the word and then you learn its definition. That never goes well. The second strategy is a little bit more effective, but overall I think it's still ineffective, and I call it brute forcing. And we all know one person who, when they learn a new word, they use it 100 times in a week. And then they stop using it. And the reason this strategy is ineffective is because the intensity is seldom sustained. They use it for that week, but then they drop off very quickly and they stop using that term. If they were able to, if not necessarily maintain the same intensity, continue using the word, I would recommend it. The third strategy is the first effective one. And this is a strategy used by foreign language learners. It's called anchoring, and essentially you learn words in their requisite context. You learn a word within a sentence rather than isolation. And the reason you do this is because memory is inherently associative. Our mind needs cues and triggers to latch onto for us to be able to retrieve words, access words. If you learn a word in isolation like this, there's nothing there for you to pull on, a thread to pull that word out into your mind. And so anchoring is the first effective strategy. But I've actually discovered a strategy even more effective than anchoring, and that's something I called layering. And layering takes anchoring one step further. What layering does is you take a sentence that you currently say, something that is deep in your speech pattern, something that you know that's second nature to you, and then you associate it with the speech pattern you're trying to cultivate, the word you're trying to learn, And when you do this, what happens is an association is created. And the next time you find yourself trying to say something you say all the time, you'll have a brief moment where you can deliberate between two words, and you can draw out the word that's more effective. So how do you do this? How do you apply some of these strategies? One software I use is called Anki. And Anki is a spaced repetition software. Put simply, it's digital flashcards. So it has all the advantages of flashcards with none of the clutter and all the work involved in creating them. And so you'd have a question card. This is the card that's shown to you. And then you're given an interval of time to work out what the answer should be. So on the left, we have the way America is, and in brackets, made to look in movies. That part in brackets signifies what we're trying to replace. It doesn't sound very good. It's not very compelling. It's perfectly grammatical, but there's no creative flair to it. And then you'll have the answer card, which is what you're trying to learn, the term you're trying to learn. And here it's portrayed in film. So the corrected sentence would be the way America is portrayed in film. And that flows a lot better. It's a lot more concise. And essentially, when it comes to refining your vocabulary, refining your articulation, there are 3 questions you can ask yourself when you are appraising a sentence. Can I make this more concise? Can I make this more precise? Can I make this more elegant? So here I've got a few sentences that I consider quite ungainly. There's nothing about them that would really move a reader in any way. The first sentence is, victory becomes, and in brackets, all he can think about. That part in brackets is what I'm trying to replace. Can I make this more concise? Can I make it more precise? Victory becomes all-consuming. That has a lot more power to it. The word all-consuming carries a certain level of imagery. And you can do the same thing with some of these other examples. I feel like I've reached the highest level I can. I feel like I've plateaued. It's gotten shorter, it's gotten more precise, and it's become more elegant. This is just a view of what my project looked like in the beginning, especially on this left side. When I first embarked on this project, there was no map. It was completely uncharted territory. And so what I did is I had a pocket notebook, 160 pages, and I filled it out in 3 days, just full of words, all the words I could find. And I was trying to get almost a summit view of all the words in English language. So if there's one thing I want you to take away from this talk, it's this. The way you speak isn't a fixed, immutable part of you. It's the most elastic part of your identity. You can change beyond recognition. Thank you. Thank you.